thank you for inviting a banker. Nowadays, not many bankers are invited to this sort of happenings. It's very interesting when I thought about these studies, and you mentioned one. We commissioned a study in the 80s already in the Netherlands, because the Netherlands thinks very high of itself as an agricultural country. It was published in Dutch, that's the problem, yeah. And you don't want to learn Dutch. I know. We will translate it and maybe do a new one. But what was interesting about that study came really from our experience in financing organic farming in the Netherlands, talking to them at kitchen tables. I did it a lot in those days, experiencing very professional, committed, passionate people. And at the same time in the public, people said, well, this is all amateuristic, it's going nowhere. And we felt this can't be true. So let's commission a study. What would happen if we would transform the whole Dutch agricultural system into a sustainable organic agriculture? Well, that study has been commissioned to a very professional bureau, and the outcome was a little bit the same as your outcome, but what was more frightening for mainstream is that we found out that the farming, mainstream farming, didn't actually make money. They don't make money for the country. And everybody thought agriculture is something we have to have. They create jobs, they create profits, tax contribution, but actually the jobs were very limited. Not much money was made. And then we even did not take into account the damage to the environmental system. So that was actually the shocking outcome, a sort of side effect we would not have liked to look into, but it didn't make money. What always sort of is much stronger than you say it's doing damage to the environment in those days. Not making money, it's worse. If I look at the sort of whole question of true cost accounting, I think it's not exclusive for agriculture. You also see it in energy. Energy is a highly subsidized, not clearly objective market mechanism whatsoever. And you also see it in banking. And I want to make some relations between the financial crisis, the banking sector, and the agricultural food sector. Because I think there are some very interesting comparisons to make, and also you can see how the one influencing the other. I think actually agriculture is suffering from the financial crisis, and I will tell you why. And that's why we have to connect those crises and link them and see what we have to do with it. What I think is behind all this is an increasingly, is a sort of innovation. We think we are doing a sort of innovation, and instead of building on savings of the past, we start to borrow from the future. Instead of building on the savings of the past, we start to borrow from the future. And that is something what's happened in the last 30 years. It happened in finance extremely, and I will tell you a little bit about it. But I also think it happened in agriculture. More and more we are borrowing from the future, the fertility of the future, and use it now to produce very cheap. And I think that whole principle is something what we have to acknowledge, to understand, and to deal with it, and not make it too simple, as this is some market mechanism and everything will be solved by the market. It will not. So if you see very quickly through what happened, is that, and that applies to land, food, energy, financial, is that you, I would say all 30, 40 years, if you need to have more, you produce more. It's a linear approach. This was a very simple, there was no planet problem, climate problem, you just need more people, you produce more. It's very simple, and the market will deal with it. The ideology of the market will deal with it. It's determining the price, about how much, and that sort of things. And then we move to, we want to accelerate production. We needed more money than we actually had saved. And then we started to create money out of nothing. Actually out of nothing. But actually we borrowed it from the future, because all that money has to be repaid, and somewhere in the future we have to produce something to repay that money. It's not for free in the end, it's just taken from the future. And I think we did the same in energy, we did the same in agriculture. We borrowed from the future, and to a certain extent that's acceptable. It really drives the economy and the production. It's a sort of innovation we as mankind have discovered, that we can create something out of nothing by using something from the future. It sounds almost mythical, but I think that's how things have developed. But then we crossed a limit, the spillover. We crossed the limit, we borrowed more than we possibly can repay. We use more of the earth than we possibly can afford as a planet. And I think that's where it goes wrong. And interesting is that you see then a split between the real economy where we really live on and the financial economy. And we think there are two levels, but they are very much interconnected. Actually, the real economy pays the price for the mistakes in the monetary economy. Very practically, there is so much money around what is looking for a return that it goes into land. It's a sort of natural storage for money as well. What happens then? Land prices go up, and it's almost impossible to run a farm on high land prices. So you see there is always a connection between the two, and you cannot say, well, the financial world is one thing and we will deal with the real economy and they will survive. Yes, in the end, that will be our natural survival basis, but it will not be as easy as we think. The real economy pays the price, and agricultural in particularly. So what are the consequences? What are the consequences? Interesting enough, in the financial system, this over-indebtedness is something what cannot be solved in a natural way. I think we have to solve, because we are the financial system. We sometimes think they're here in the city, it's in Wall Street. No, we are the financial system. Our pension money is there, our banks are there. So we have to get rid of the illusion that all that money will come in the future. That is a real illusion, and we have to be more conscious about it, that we will pay that price, and that now we have to deal with it. Otherwise, we grow the illusion and our children will suffer from it. Interesting enough, in the real economy, it's slightly different. It's not just an illusion. You really have to do cost cutting. You have to bring debt and equity in balance again. We have been over-indebted. We have to bring that in balance again. So the real economy, people who make things, real services, they cannot borrow more. They have to reduce their borrowing, build up more equity again, and sort of build more on the savings of the past than borrow from the future. What I think is an important notion. In agriculture, I feel it's even more fundamental. In agriculture, it's not just us as a business reducing cost. It's also that we have to deal with the balance with nature. What is the planet? What can the planet accept from us? And we have to find new balances with nature itself. And I think there is, I feel, a strong case for agriculture to say, look, we have to see that we create this balance ourselves with a direct connection to people again, not through big systems. And therefore, I think you need new approaches to organize agriculture and to organize that part of the economy. And I will finish more or less. What we developed as a principle for sustainable banking by the Global Alliance for Bank on Values is that there are three principles what are basic for a healthy system. It's transparency, it's sustainability, and diversity. And I think those principles could also apply to agriculture. I think if we have more transparency, that is the basis for true cost-price accounting. Although there's an interesting quote from Warren Buffett to make, price is what you pay, value is what you get. So don't think if you have the price right, that you have the whole notion of value right. And I think in agriculture there is a lot of value. Diversity is very important because we want to have a much more horizontal structure. We want to be close to real economy, and people directly should measure the value instead of complex price mechanisms. So value has to be the basis of the price and not the other way around. It's very important that we create very close economic constellations where people can see the context, can create value, and then come to a price. In conclusion, I would say transparency is a good starting point to get a more clarity on the price, on the value, but you need diversity and sustainability to really appreciate the value and see what you can create as a new mechanism. And I would say we really need this new economic constellation to survive and to match the disillusions we will get with the financial system in the future. Thank you very much.